Challenge Writers. This week you will be writing a narrative about taking a hike through the forest. Hopefully you just finished listening to the book Red Riding Hood, listening to or reading the nonfiction book Forests, and watching the video Forest Full of Life. So this week in our Challenge Writer Traits, we are going to be focusing on varied sentence structures and types of sentences. And that's really making sure that your writing is interesting. We don't want to have the same boring type of sentences over and over, very repetitive. You want to mix it up and get a great variety of sentences to keep your reader interested in what you're writing. Okay, so we're going to do two things. We're going to look at types of sentences, and then we're going to look at varying the sentence structure. So for types of sentences, we have 4 types of sentences. Declarative, which is a statement, that's a telling sentence. We have interrogative, which is a question, that's an asking sentence. We have imperative, which is a command, and we have exclamatory, which shows emotion, okay? And I want you in your writing to try to use a variety. Many of the sentences that we write are declarative, they're telling. But when you throw in an interrogative, which is a question, or an exclamatory or a command, it really changes up the writing and gives a lot of variety and keeps the reader really interested. So here's an example of declarative statement. We spotted a mother deer and her baby fawn nibbling on grass. I'm just stating that we saw the mother deer and her fawn eating grass. An interrogative or a question, here's one example. Can you believe we saw raccoons washing their paws at the stream? So I could have said, I saw a raccoon washing its paws at the stream, but turning it into a question changes up the flow of your writing, okay? And you're kind of asking the reader, don't forget your question mark. An imperative is a command. So instead of saying, I ran away from the skunks, say, run away from the skunks. So you're giving a command to whoever is in the story to get away from the skunks. An exclamatory, showing emotion. So this is a command like telling them to run away. And exclamatory is kind of similar to this, but it's not giving them a command, which is telling somebody to do something, more just showing emotion. So exclamatory, I couldn't believe it. And that's where you have the exclamation. For imperative, you can use a period at the end, or you can use an exclamation, but exclamatory really does end with an exclamation mark. So using a variety of different types of sentences will keep the reader on the toes and keep your writing interesting. All right, come with me. The next thing that we're going to look at is how to vary your sentence structure. So I've written 3 examples of sentences that are all pretty straightforward declarative sentences. And I'm going to show you how to change it up just a little bit and actually change the sentence structure and kind of change the flow of your writing. So it says, I gazed into the trees and saw a robin perched on a branch. I'm just going to make a couple of revisions. I'm going to take out I, and I'm going to cross this out, and I'm going to start it with gazing. Okay? Gazing into the trees, cross that out, comma. So I turn this into a phrase that shows action of what I'm doing. I'm gazing into the trees. Gazing into the trees, I saw a robin perched on a branch. It's really saying the same thing, but it's changing the order of the words, and it's kind of giving a little more action that I'm gazing into the trees, and it's varying the way that I'm beginning my sentences. So it's not always, I stared at the trees, I did this, I did this. You're changing up the order of your words and the form of the verb. All right, the next one. The log had tiny mushrooms and moss on it. Same thing. A lot of times we start sentences with the, so we want to change it. We're going to cross out this part, or actually move this part, and we're going to start with a capital. Tiny mushrooms and moss, and instead of the verb being had, which is not an action verb, I'm going to put the word sprouted because that's more of an action verb. So it's going to be tiny mushrooms and moss sprouted on the log. And again, it's really saying the same thing, but it's kind of changing the order and it's mixing up so that the sentences sound different instead of constantly the same structure. All right, and the last one, it says, I marveled at all of the trees as we walked along the path. Again, starting with the word I in a lot of times. So we're gonna just switch this. This is going to go to the beginning and I'm gonna put a capital, okay? So up here, as we walked on the path, and this is a dependent clause, which means it wouldn't stand alone. It's not a complete sentence. As we walked on the path, I marveled at all of the trees, and the period's going to go there. Again, it's just changing the structure of the writing and really mixing up the types of sentences that you have. So go ahead and come with me, and we're going to look at the piece of writing that I did, and here's a little test. The test is, if you read the first 3 words of every sentence, do they sound the same and kind of repetitive? And I know I did this in another lesson. Or are they different? So I'm going to read the first 3 words of all the sentences. An emerald mosaic, majestic fir trees, twittering blue jays, one summer morning, as we sat, here and there, along the path, as we walked, gazing upward into, she was feeding. A while later, we spread out. Then my brother, can you believe we watched them before we started? Soon after that, tiny mushrooms and crawling with earthworms, we picked up. Then my brother, I couldn't believe. Run, everyone, I shrieked. Gazing up, sorry. Wouldn't it be better that day we had? Why not step? And so the test that you're trying to see is, are there repetitive words that you keep beginning the sentences with, or do they always start with something new? And I know in the last piece I read a couple weeks ago, I actually noticed I was repeating some of the same words again and again, but this time I feel like pretty much all the sentences start with different words. So I feel like I've really changed up the sentence structure. I've also, as you'll see later in the next video, I've tried to use the different types of sentences. All right, remember, this week we are learning about changing our sentence structure and using different types of sentences. I'll talk to you soon.